Hi, and welcome to the latest webinar in the World Summit AI webinar series brought to you by Inspired Minds. We're delighted that today's webinar is in partnership with Cognigy and focuses on AI in action. We will be looking at 3 different examples of how AI is effectively being deployed in businesses to gain an advantage. And just for your information, this webinar will be posted online later on, and you can view it on demand on the World Summit AI website. My name is Stephanie, and I'm broadcasting live from you from London. For the past 5 years, I've actually been investing in software startups, and many of our startups actually use AI to solve problems such as language translation for customer support. Our portfolio company Unbabel, or product quality checks in the factory, our portfolio company Scoretex. And this is also the topic that we will discuss today. As AI has become accessible to all of us, what are the innovations in business anno 2020? We will be presenting the first speaker now. That's Thijs Waanders. Thijs is the technical consulting manager at Cognigy. And Cognigy is a tech startup that offers a conversational AI platform to automate customer support and also employee onboarding. And the customized bots can be added to different channels such as WhatsApp, Facebook, and your own website, and are integrated into your existing ERP systems and CRM systems. And today, Thijs will talk about how to create human-like voice bots. Passing the mic to you, Thijs.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. So today I want to talk about hands-on voice AI. And what that means is that we need to talk about conversational AI and AI in more detail. So I put up a little agenda in order to take you through all of these topics. So we're going to start with conversational AI, what it is, what it can do. Then we're going to have a look at how it works. And in order to do that, we need to understand some machine learning. It's not going to be too difficult. Bear with me. Then we're going to look at what makes voice bots special, because it's a bit of a challenge to work on voice bots. And then we'll actually build our small little sample bot, and we're going to try it. Then at the end, I want to talk about the implications and possible next steps. So conversational AI is something you probably came across already. It is pretty much everywhere, and it's still in a very infant stage, one could say, right? You might have talked to a chatbot already, and they're funny, but they're not always that great. You may have a Alexa at home or a Google Home, or maybe you have a car with a voice interface. They work, but they're still relatively simple. All of that, letting humans talk to machines through a natural interface like language, that is what conversational AI is about. So it's not just one channel, it's all of them and the technology that puts that together. Now, some people say it's stuff of the future, and I would agree. I think it's only going to get better. And if we look at this little girl here to the right, she's playing with a Nintendo Game Boy. Now, I'm in my early 30s. I grew up with a Game Boy, and you see that she is just not able to play with it because she expects it to have a touchscreen. So I would go as far and say that in a couple of years, devices that can't speak, they will feel as limited as displays without touch do right now. I think you're gonna talk to your fridge because it just makes sense, right? You need information while you stand there. You don't have time to look at your display. You're just gonna interact with it. So the interaction is only meaningful if there's some sort of transaction going on. It's what we call transactional conversational AI, where what we mean with that is that you have your channel here at the bottom, for example, WhatsApp, or your fridge, right? And then if you ask it something, so this lady, suppose this lady's asking whether the blue sofa is in stock, then the conversational AI doesn't just need to give an answer, like what are your opening times, 9 to 5. No, it should actually look into backend systems to give a meaningful answer. So it's all about integration. The conversational AI needs to, reach into backend systems in order to come up with something meaningful. Now, how does this work? If we talk from human to human, so we have Linda here, suppose Linda is talking to me, then we need to sort of channel, of course, right? So she's having her phone right now. Then the first thing I try to do, I instinctively do that because we speak in language, is I try to understand her intent, the thing that she means, like in a broader context. I then also try to filter out specific stuff, like maybe the blue sofa that she was talking about. I need to come up with an answer. I maybe need to add some dynamic information. I might need to look up stuff in SAP myself, right? Or look at an order sheet. And then I send a response by answering in natural language. Now, the conversational AI equivalent of that is quite similar. We need an endpoint because it needs to understand that a phone is different from WhatsApp, right? They have different rules. Phone is with voice, WhatsApp has galleries or attachments. So that's what the endpoint is about, is interpreting what the user said through the channel. Then there's also the intent. This is actually where the machine learning kicks in, and we'll get there in a bit. And then there's the entities and slots, the specific meanings of individual words. Then it comes up with an answer, and that's where we as humans come in. That's where we need to train the AI. We need to kind of steer the conversation in a direction. We need to say, well, if someone comes in and asks for this, then it should probably answer that. And of course, we also have the integrations where we can reach out to APIs, right? We don't literally look something up in the system. We do that with a system-to-system machine interface using an API. Now, the interesting part are the intents and the slots, the key phrases. This is where the machine learning, the natural language understanding happens. And this can be best explained by just looking at an example. So suppose we have these two sentences here at the screen. It says, I need two demo tablets for the event tomorrow evening. If you're learning a language, then you probably don't get all of that at once. If you're learning to read as a kid, you probably also don't get the whole sentence. You look for individual words. And that's what the machine learning, what the AI is doing as well. It will first try to come up with, well, tomorrow is something I know. Tomorrow is a date, right? Tomorrow evening is a moment in time. 2 is a number. Here at the bottom, we see an email address, my account activation, right? Already took 2 hours. 2 is a number again. Hours has a certain meaning. So that's the first pass, the first stage where we try to come up with, that's what we call slot. It's a slot filling. We try to discover what those individual words mean. That's the first step. Now, the second step is about finding the intent, the meaning of the sentence in a broader context. And that's a bit more tricky. Like this sentence could be summarized as someone needing a device. If we look at this sentence, this has to do with account activation problem, but there's different ways to express this. So how do we know, or how does that work? Like, how do we make sure that all of these expressions are understood by the conversational AI? Well, machine learning, that's where it is, right? And I mean, you've probably seen this graphic before. I think it's really accurate. It is about recognizing patterns in a way. That's how the model works in the background. Yes, it is advanced, and we have brilliant people working at our company, and that's all true. But it's important to understand that this is something that we need. We need to train the system how to look at certain things. We need to provide it with sample input, and that's what we do by creating example sentences, so actual training data. So if we take the I need a device intent, then there's different ways of expressing this. We could say I need 2 demo tablets, or I need a device. Maybe someone comes in and says, can you help me find a new iPhone? Like, there's no way for us to know, what exactly someone is going to say. That's what we do here. We try to come up with example sentences, and then we train the AI. And based on this smaller sample set of example sentences, right, it can hopefully understand a broader context by scoring, by doing the pattern matching in a way. You could say, could you help me with a new device? Has an 81% match with with the overall intent here, and that's what we then take and base further bot logic on. So what I would like you to do is to use the chat that we have here, because we're going to create one intent together, and this intent is going to be about asking for a order status. So I would like you to go in the chat and just type 1 or 2 sentences and type how you would ask for an order status. So you would call the bot, you say like, well, what's the status of my order? That's one way of going about it. Maybe you can come up with some variations, and then we'll use that in a bit to train the bot, and then hopefully it will work. So voice bots have very specific challenges. And the reason for that is, well, you can see the example sentences here. If you would not see the slide right now, and I would say the stuff he knows can lead to problems, and then I say the stuff he knows can lead to problems, it's identical. You would probably not hear the difference. You need a further context to come up with, with the right interpretation. If you look at the bottom here, mine is a long and a sad tail. Tail and tail it sounds identical, right? And this is of course very, very language specific. So this is something to keep. This is definitely something to keep in mind. And I see some sample sentences popping up. Thank you very much. It's great stuff. So what I will do now is show you how we're going to build one. This is the plan. We're going to have two intents. One is the one that I already prepared. And I need to ask you guys for one more favor. I would like to ask one of you to provide your phone number in the chat. No worries, no one else can see it. I will remove it afterwards. Because we're also gonna, ask the bot to just hand us over to a human, and then I want to try if we can actually hand that over to a human. So if someone wants to give a phone number, be my guest, and then we'll see if it works. Right. Before we continue, let's just build the bot and see how it works. So for that, I'm gonna go into a tool, and what you see here is a simple flowchart. It can do just a couple of things. It can react to talking to a human. It can tell something about an order status, but the model is not trained yet. We need something to train the model with, and those are the example sentences. And I see that someone actually provided the phone number. Thank you very much. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the intent menu, and you see I only added one example sentence. So I'm actually going to add some more here. So this is one that I got. You'll know when you see it, if you typed it. I'll copy in one more. When can I expect my widget? Could you update me with what's happening with my order? Could you update my order status? And then let's take one more so that we have a bit of diversity. What is the order status of my latest order? Doesn't really make any sense, but let's just take this as a training data. So I'm going to save this. The other one is the human. I need to talk to someone. Hand me over, human, please. Right? I saved it, and I'm going to train the model. What's happening now is you can see the model load. Let's just hope it works. And what happens now is that the model is being created in the backend. So now we build a very small neural network that can hopefully interpret what we said. So let's test that real quick. Let's say something like, what is the order status today? Actually, I should also be able to add typos. You see, this is not one of the example sentences, but it's 97% sure that it has to do with order status and not with talking to a human, right? Need to talk to someone, please. Let's see some deliberate typos. You see, it's still 90% sure that this has more to do with talking to a human than with the order status. So we can test it here. The order status, when that happens, is we're going to say, sure, what's your order number? We're going to ask for a number, and then we're going to say the package is underway, right? Here we would actually reach into SAP or do something exciting, but we're not going to do that right now. And I'm going to actually update the phone number. So Barry, I hope you can pick up the phone. If we call you, it's a bit of an experiment. And I will now put that in here, just one more second off screen. And then we have, it's a UK number. That's exciting. Like so, we're just going to see if it's going to work. Nothing's guaranteed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use my phone, and I'm going to call the bot. And while doing that, I'm going to show you the flow again. So we come in, and the first thing the bot says at the bottom here is, hi there, I'm the webinar bot, right? So let's see if that works by having me call the bot.
Hi there, I'm the webinar bot.
Hey, what's the status of my order?
Sure, what's your order number?
That's 12345.
The package is underway.
Can you forward me to a human?
Sure, hold on.
Oh, something's happening.
Hello.
Hi, is this Barry?
Hi, I'm afraid all our customer service lines are closed today.
Oh, okay. That's too bad. I'll try again tomorrow. Thanks for participating. That's awesome. All right. Cheers. So that fortunately worked. It's always an exciting moment. So one more slide to share with you because we're running out of time. That's what are the implications of all of this, right? First of all, I want you to realize, and hopefully you did, that this is not magic. This is something that you can do. You don't need a huge technical team. You can do this with your business departments, with your subject matter experts, and of course some technical guidance, but this is doable. It's visual. You can roll this out. It's also, that's the second point, not one or the other. It's not, we don't need agents anymore. Of course, you still need your agents. This is about, assisting them, maybe fetching out some of the common requests so that they can focus on more important stuff. You can also have a bot that listens in on conversations and then helps the agent proactively. And the third one is that there is, of course, a return on investment, right? Even if you would deflect 30% of your calls by using a voice bot like this, or using the same bot and then just putting in a WhatsApp, it's the same flow, right? Then you can deflect some of those calls. And of course, that can help you bring down your costs while also increasing the customer service quality, right? Because you have lower waiting times. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for participating. Hope you liked it. If you have any questions, reach out to me directly or type it in the chat right now, and I'll be sure to answer them. Yeah.
Thank you, Thijs. It's great you managed to get a live working demo to show us all how easy this is. A couple of questions I already have from the audience. Let's start with how much does a conversation cost?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. That's hard to say. And what's relevant here is that it's conversation based. So it's an accurate, that's an accurate way of measuring it. You could say that it is, well, the way we do it with our platform is like an all-in-one package, in the sense that it doesn't really matter which channels you use. It's about the actual transactions. So how many people are calling, how many people are helped by using this technology. And we don't really care whether you use Facebook or, like the phone line or stuff like that. That's the summary. And it is, of course, relatively cheap, right? If you look at it on a per conversation basis.
Cheaper than using humans only, I suppose.
Cheaper than using only a human, yeah. That's for sure. Yeah, we're talking about cents. Yeah.
Just in between, for the audience, any questions, please feel free to use the chat functionality of GoToWebinar. One other question that came in is, how can you be, how kind of do you compare with other players in the market in terms of machine learning and how advanced your product is?
The answer is we have a pretty good product. I invite everyone to come to the launch of the new product 1st of September. Shameless plug here, but this is going to be even better. We are agnostic, so we have our own product and we really like it, but it's a bit of an orchestrator. So we say that if you want to use Google or IBM, be our guest. You can plug that into our product and use the same flow designer. So we are NLP or machine learning agnostic, if you will. Yeah, that's how so we don't directly compete with them. We kind of have our own alternative, but you don't have to use it. You can, we make the existing solutions better. That's one way of thinking about it.
Yeah. And what if I have my own products? Do I need to add them all to the system?
Yeah, the system needs some way of knowing about your products, but that's an automated process. So you don't have to type in all the products, right? You connect your database and then you stream all your products in the system, and then the system, it's the slots, right? Just like the dates and stuff. You can also add your own products, like the blue sofa that the lady was asking for. You can add a whole list of your products, and then the system understands what the product is.
We have one more coming in here. Can you train customer service teams as a service from Cognigy?
Can you train customer service teams as a service from Cognigy?
I think I interpret this as, do you do some professional services as part of? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes. The answer is yes. We are focusing on a technology, but we have a professional services team in the States, here in Europe, primarily in Germany, but we can do all of Europe and APAC by now as well. We have offices in Sydney as well, and we have a partner ecosystem. So we also do projects with the bigger integrators like Deloitte and Accenture and KPMG and regional partners as well. Yeah. So there's always a solution to a challenge. We can make it work one way or another. Yeah.
And will the agents be able to see kind of the handover from the bot part, and then, as we just saw in the example, right, order number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Do I have to, as an agent, ask that question again when the customer comes and has a direct phone call?
A great question. That is integrated, right? So the conversation is tracked, and when we hand it over to the agent, like right now, we literally forwarded the call to Barry. Thanks again, Barry. That was really cool. And then what would happen is we would also write it in Salesforce, and then Barry can see, in the Salesforce that, oh, this person is actually calling. This was what was discussed so far. Here's a transcript. That's all available. Or we can actually integrate it with your contact center, with your Genesys or Cisco or Avaya, and then have that fully integrated there as well. That's also possible. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I have one more here. How do you decide which intents you need to build?
Oh, that's a really good question. That is the science. Again, that's conversation design. It's about use cases. What's the lower hanging fruit? What's the stuff that we want to pilot without risking any customers, because it might not work so well. They might not react so well at the start. So that's really something. It's a bit of a journey, really, to explore what works best for a company. It's really about use cases. What is the stuff that is costing a lot of money? What are the repetitive questions, etc. 40% of your queries are the same question, then it might make sense to start with that. Yeah.
Brilliant. And we just saw a kind of a use case where we used voice, right? Can you actually use the same system for messaging as well? So, for example, like the WhatsApp, Facebook world?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go into the system and you can literally publish this flow on all of these endpoints that you can see here. So it is it's all included. Right? So we can even configure visual widgets all in the system. That's all available. So we can go in and say, well, instead of saying voice, saying sure, hold on, we can, if it were Facebook, then we might show a gallery with an element here. We could just customize it with images. And that's what we focus on. We think that the business user, the non-technical person, should be able to play with this stuff because he or she knows best. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Thijs, thank you so much for showing us today. And I will start introducing the next speaker already in
looking forward.
Kind of looking at the time. And so our next speaker is Benji Kutsea, who is the Director of Digital Tribe Lead at VodafoneZiggo. And her role consists of offering strategic leadership all the way from kind of design to implementation, deployment for all digital assets and infrastructure for both Vodafone and Ziggo. And next to this, Benji is also a venture partner at impact-focused VC fund Caliber Capital. She recently also sold her 2 companies, Empty Trips, a freight transport marketplace, and SureGargo, a marine insurance provider. And so today, Benji will bundle all her knowledge to show how AI is used within VodafoneZiggo to digitalize the customer journey, but also to assess whether we are eligible for faster internet. So pleased to have you present, Benji.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me all right. Yes? Assuming. All right. So thank you for having me this afternoon. Some exciting topics and obviously quite difficult to follow up from voice chatbots. Very exciting stuff. So I wanted to give a bit of an overview of what we're doing at VodafoneZiggo and what the journey has been like to get to doing AI more in a big corporate. So what I like to say is also we went from aggregated intuition that we think this is the right thing that we should be doing, and how do we get to the artificial intelligence. So at VodafoneZiggo today, who we are, why we want to follow into a digital telco and what that means, and what is the use case that I will discuss today. So firstly, VodafoneZiggo, those who don't know, so we're one of the largest fixed and mobile providers in the Netherlands. And we have a host of great brands and great parent companies. Some of them a lot more evolved in their digital journeys and leveraging the data that they have available than others. Because of the number of users that we have across our products, of course, we have also a number of use cases and intents. So even discussing the voice chatbot earlier today, I was just getting my mind was going crazy about what else we could be doing with our own chatbot. But yeah, we're one of the largest providers, and surprisingly, we have taken, like most large corporates, the digital journey, i.e. we're going digital with everything that we do, in every sales journey, in every service journey, and also obviously in our operations and processes. So how we've decided to do that is we focus very much on personalization, offering the right thing to the customer at the right time, be it a solution or being it a product, making sure that that experience is the best and that it's And of course, you can see that there is a nice golden thread through everything here that we could or want to offer, where we can leverage artificial intelligence or machine learning. Over and above that, how do we see that we get there? We always keep the customer central to everything that we do, be it from privacy and data protection to even leveraging that data to ensure they get the right value out of what we are doing. And then keeping digital first in everything that we do as well. And keeping digital first, for us, what that means is that any scenario that we can think of, how can we convert that onto a digital platform or into a digital step or to dematerialize it? So in applying artificial intelligence in what we do, it's what we see and what we say and what we do. So how do we acquire a customer? How do we maintain that customer? And obviously, how do we retain that customer? And that is all within our cycle towards ensuring that we don't have or we avoid churn at all costs. And also by retaining the customer, we very much deep dive into our product quality. So is our network stable? Is our product stable? Is the customer getting the value from the product that they expect? Especially as we are a premium brand and therefore we are also premium priced. So this is of course very important for us. And the continued squeeze from certain corporate shareholders or investors, of course, we have to focus on costs. So how do we ensure that we continuously offer the customer the best experience at the least cost internally, and also while ensuring that our teams are having a great time? So today, in terms of what we're focusing on AI, there's many use cases that we are trying to apply and also to optimize a bit more. I'm not saying that we are mature or very advanced at it just yet, but if we focus on the acquisition, very much on our chatbot, and evolving the maturity of our chatbot does take a bit of time and a lot of investment and also learning for the teams. So I would say that our chatbot is a little bit, in terms of maturity, still weak, deductive and a bit classical, but it's evolving daily. And also we have the complexity in our database and in our back end that we are a joint venture. Therefore, we have two back ends that we have to scrape when looking for an answer for a customer. And also which portal the customer is coming through. Are they coming through the Vodafone way? Are they coming through the Ziggo way? So there's a bit of complexity there in terms of acquiring the customer, because of course you would love a converged customer, i.e. if you're only a Ziggo customer, how do we make you a Vodafone customer? And if you're only a Vodafone customer, how do we make you a Ziggo customer? And regardless of your problem, if you are a Vodafone Ziggo customer, where do we route you and how do we solve your problem? So you can see it's quite complex. Then also on the onboarding perspective, what hardware do you have? Which location are you based in? Can we offer you a certain package? For example, if you want to become a Ziggo customer, we check your postal code and your location, and therefore we can say whether we can service you, yes or no. But then over and above that, which we'll look in the use case a bit later on, is even if we can service that apartment or that location, do you have the right hardware, and which hardware do you have? And depending on the hardware depends on what speed of internet you'll get. So it becomes even more and more complex, even though I love simplicity. And then of course on engagement for AI. So that is your typical marketing side. What do we leverage internally in terms of the information that we have on you to ensure that we offer you the right content consistently, because Ziggo is not only fixed internet, but also we provide content via fixed TV. So can we help you choose the right entertainment to watch at any point in time? Then on the maintenance side, huge opportunity here, where a very specific team of data scientists within Vodafone Ziggo is focusing on in terms of network optimization, network rollout, and also on the preemptive issue resolution side, which is if you do have a problem, how do we know what your intent could be, or how can we decide or make a decision that there's a high likelihood that you in this area have an outage. So you will be calling the call center, so we can preempt that to say what you need to do to resolve it, to reduce the pressure on our call centers. And of course, we're looking into service content because we have an immense amount of hardware in terms of boxes, TV boxes, etc. Can we offer you the right service content intuitively to help you resolve your own problem? Because we believe in enabling our customer towards self-service. And not only because it's a great cost saver for us, but because we really do believe that customers should be self-enabled on digital channels and become digital savvy savvy, and we have a host of initiatives that we do in terms of our CSR to even enable the elderly or non-digitally savvy people to become more digitally savvy so they can feel empowered. And then also preventative outages. When we know there is certain maintenance being done on the network and there might be a likelihood of an outage, how can we then manage the network to ensure that we balance the capacity to reduce the impact? Then on the retention flows, of course, it's personalization. There we have a lot of use cases working with Guru so that we can ensure, or Pega, sorry, we call a Guru within our organization, leveraging Pega capability, and also with our preemptive churn model. So knowing that you might churn or that you fall within a risk category, how can we then offer you the right campaigns or support or packages to try and retain you? Because of course, we are a great company. Looking to tomorrow, where we see a lot more opportunity within artificial intelligence and machine learning of what we can do better, definitely within incident management and testing automation, so within the digital channels on the front end in particular, because we have such a complex architecture and handover between our OSS and BSS and front end, that adds a lot of incidents. Also, we have the agile way of work, where we have 12 autonomous teams across multiple products in both the B2C and B2B domain on the front end, but that creates quite a lot of releases that we need to manage that could create a lot of incidents, and within the complex organization of a joint venture with multiple back-end databases. So in incident management, we see a huge opportunity there for artificial intelligence to try and prevent the number of incidents, but also to reduce the significance of the incidents, and also the automation of the communication once an incident occurs internally to help our colleagues have less headaches. Then on what we say also on the personal side, so to optimize our offers of the dual brand, so really bring the value to our customers better and faster from the dual brand offers that we can create. So to mine, if you're only a Vodafone customer, what offers can we bring to you from Ziggo and vice versa, and at what point in your life cycle as a customer the right time to bring it to you. And also preemptive comms, once again, in our applications. That is, okay, we know you live in a certain area, there's been an outage, you're on this package, we know that you like to watch certain shows at a certain time of the evening, please know that there'll be a disruption, we would like you to do X, Y, Z. And then also on the product side, we definitely are looking into adjacent opportunities. There is, for example, aggregated entertainment data with all the OTT services and scraping that information as well, so that you have a better entertainment experience. And also in terms of what you need packages, we're definitely looking into that as a company. So what are people actually using? Are they only paying for what they need? So that we can tailor make offers and packages to customers very intuitively for the next generation. Now the deep dive into the case that I wanted to show, that I think was quite a nice combination of hardware, software, customer frustration, but also onboarding them into our great GigaNet network or gigabit network, so that you get the super fast internet value of the huge CapEx investments that we've made into the area, which we have done without digging. So I'm very proud of that, being an environmentalist. So firstly, the situation of what it does. So like I mentioned earlier, once we know that we can offer you internet in your apartment or at your home, then over and above that, it depends on what hardware has been installed into your actual home. So in Dutch, we call it the IOP. So I'm not Dutch, but it's the Abonnement Overname Punten. And that's a typical telecoms or cable providers naming convention for it. But it's basically the little box in the wall, and depending on which box you have and the version of it or how modern it is will determine whether you get access to our gigabit network, which is our fast internet speed. And obviously the customers would call into the call center and they would try and explain or describe which one they have, and there's multiple versions of it, which is obviously not that intuitive or that easy. And of course also can frustrate not only the customer, but also the poor service agent that's trying to understand what the client is trying to visually explain. So with this solution, basically you take a picture of your hardware device that's in your wall or the box, and it will determine for you whether that precise hardware device can actually facilitate our super speeds. If not, you can then order the right hardware, and an engineer would be sent out to replace the old hardware with the new hardware. Why it truly helps us as a company, one, obviously the reduction on the call center, but over and above that, the hardware replacement. So instead of sending an engineer out to replace a hardware that actually didn't need to be replaced, or an adapter that didn't need to be replaced that would actually have worked, that's the second, which is great for the environment as well, and obviously for our costs. But customer satisfaction, right? You don't want to have to wait for an engineer to come in to replace if you didn't really need to. You also want to know if you're able to actually upgrade your subscription or not, whether you get access to these internets or not. So it just helps that customer become more enabled themselves. How it all works, of course, it uses visual analysis of the image. It then mines it against the database and then says yes or no, and it also cross matches it against whether that network is available in the area. So you basically get a dual match every single time. And then it automates the ordering for the customer as well. This is not yet in our MyZiggo app, which is our self-service app. This is only on the web for now, but it will be taken into the MyZiggo app so it can connect directly to your camera, and you can have a seamless process, and also against your profile, what hardware you've got available and not, and what speed and what subscription you've got. So it can do a multiple matching there. So this was basically where we're using artificial intelligence to match our hardware to our service, to our content, and to our customer, and to our product proposition, which I thought was a nice dual approach to showing what we're doing. So that is the presentation. Now I am happy to take some questions.
Yeah, Ben. I would be able to describe my wall mount under the circle. I think very help you. Question from the audience. I'm kind of waiting for my camera to work. In the meantime, there we go. What's important to you? You listed a lot of options under. Then they had like kind of a vision roadmap there. How do you go prioritization process?
Sorry, Stephanie, you really broke up there. I don't know if it's my internet or your internet, and I hope it's not the Ziggo internet. So you said, how do we prioritize use cases? Okay, so and I got the question in the chat because I think the internet's quite poor, so I hope my internet's not bad. So the question, what is the most important to you when prioritizing in the now versus the next in terms of use cases I'm showing for artificial intelligence? So it always comes down to what the customer needs are and what the intents are, what the biggest cost drivers are. So for example, in the chatbots in particular, for the use cases that we've prioritized there, there's a huge project ongoing right now. What are the biggest call drivers? And how can we automate that conversation? And also, is there an underlying problem that we can automate as well? So if it's hardware related, do we want to replace the hardware? Should we be looking at more innovative hardware? Should we be replacing the hardware completely? For example, why do we want boxes? And for entertainment, should we go boxless? How can we then leverage artificial intelligence and aggregating data to Chromecast and stream onto your devices? So it really depends, but always comes down to cost and value and whether we're capable of doing it. So the value versus the effort matrix that we usually say, and whether the effort will be worth the investment and what's feasible. And like I said, in the architecture, it is a bit more complex. So we always have to look to whether it's feasible and doable in our infrastructure. But we take it case by case, and also because we have two brands, we also depends on the value proposition to that brand itself, which is very different in the Ziggo context versus the Vodafone context, which is more mobile, a bit more straightforward, a bit more vanilla. And there's quite a lot that's already been done from group at Vodafone. So we see a lot more creativity or opportunity for imaginary thinking and AI on the Ziggo side, and usually it's also more expensive on the Ziggo side.
Another question in turning my for a moment to hopefully save some bandwidth, and then I have the photo. I think if we have own data.
Okay, so the question is, how might an innovative British AI startup, and I like the self-claims there, engage with Vodafone Ziggo if we think we have something unique that you could leverage using your own data? So it really depends what the context is if it's from a customer's data perspective, or whether it's from the network data perspective. If it's from network, regardless, I think the best is to drop me a note and then I can commission it into the right team internally, because it's a very broad question about what data we can use, because we have so much data, and we obviously have a very ethical consideration of how we leverage that data. So maybe drop me a personal note. I'm happy for the organizers to share my email with you. I'm not too sure who asked that question. And then we can see how it can land in Vodafone Ziggo. But we do partner quite actively with startups, or try to. We are entrenched in the Amsterdam startup scene. So not only to help them work with us, but also to help us think outside the box, because that's exactly why Vodafone Ziggo hired me, an entrepreneur, was to bring more external thinking internally, because as a typical corporate, you get stuck on the internal stuff. So happy to chat.
Perfect. Thank you. And really hope you can hear. How would you describe the maturity of your chatbot? Where do you see opportunities for additional application of bots?
Yeah, I think it's something that I've said a little bit earlier. I think our chatbot is definitely still quite weak, deductive, and classical in its approach. It uses the very typical rule systems and statistical approaches and how we define the intents. I think the complexity that we have in our chatbot is, of course, the Dutch language, and also when we bring in voice. But I think overall, if I had to look at where bots could play a bigger role, it would be, I would say, more in the operational process. So for example, I explained the complexity in our architecture and our back-end systems. And often what happens on our digital channels when a customer is within an acquisition flow, because there's so many multiple handovers behind the scenes, behind the front end, a lot of the orders actually don't get captured into our e-commerce systems, or then there's order fallout, or there's delays. And of course, every 1 second delay for a customer on a website is potentially a 4 to 7% loss in conversion. And that is really dangerous for a company like us, where we're trying to attack 30 to 40% of our revenues online. So where I see a bigger opportunity for the bot, other than the chatbot with the customer, is actually for a bot between the customer and our back-end interfaces to capture the orders and then to fulfill the system requirements after the customer has already left or navigated away and they feel that they've achieved the success that they needed online. So for example, capturing the order details and then filling in the e-commerce system that's got a delay, or that's not available, or that's not stable at the moment because it's so complex in the back end. I think that's where bots have a lot bigger of an application, is on the operational process side, and not just on the conversational side. That of course is important, but I think the big value is what we're not getting right yet in our legacy systems.
Perfect. So that was the question we had from the audience. Thank you for that. And our final speaker today is Fras, head of AI strategy acceleration at Nordea. And for Nordea seems to be a frontrunner when it comes to technology. Early as 2015, they started the first steps with robotics, and Matthias has a very large role in Nordea implementation, ranging from pattern recognition to distraction, customer conversions. We actually heard earlier with both Cognigy and with Vodafone Ziggo. This is a unique moment to learn about problem solving with AI in a bank and see a real claims processing case that Nordea has implemented. So passing on to you, Matthias.
Well, thanks very much. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, great. Okay, my name is Matthias Frost. I hope you can see my screen as well, right? Yes. All right. Matthias Frost. I've been, solving problems, you could say, in large corporates for my entire career, about 20 years. First part of it as management consultant, and the second part, last 10 years in Nordea, having some different roles. Been working with scaling up our robotics capability. We have about 300 or 400 robots, software robots internally, part of the virtual agent journey. Our virtual agent has about 250,000 conversations a month with our customers and employees. And then lately, a few years back, driving our portfolio of AI machine learning projects, both driving AI strategically in terms of organizing and operating model and lifecycle stuff, as well as supporting a portfolio of use cases. So I'm going to talk about problem solving in times of AI, and that is actually more about mindset than technology. That is at least my experience. So first, shortly about Nordea. We are the largest financial institution in the Nordics, about 30,000 employees, about 480 branches across Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, about 10 million customers. We in retail banking, corporate banking, and wealth management. So the first question you usually touch upon in something like this is like, what is AI, or how do you define AI? But I will not go into that trap, because I think that question is almost impossible to answer these days. But I wanted to start at least to give a point of a reference on AI, the way we apply it in Nordea. So it's about, and we talked about this in the earlier cases here. It's about being able to read, see, and listen things. It's about OCR, computer vision, and speech-to-text technologies to make sure that we put stuff in a digital and structural format. Because once it's there, you can do stuff with it, right? So then, so that requires, for example, we have chatbots. That is a form of deep learning, usually deep learning type of model. But then we do stuff with that data. You either try to detect patterns, for example, looking for suspicious trades or other unwanted patterns. You try to forecast things, like you try to figure out or forecast what customers are likely to churn over the next 3 months or 6 months. You try to personalize your communication with your customers, so that you can provide relevant contact to everyone. You also try to make decisions, which I think is a super key capability with AI. Being able to actually automate a lot of the decision making across many processes. That's what will enable a lot of automation going forward. Or the last part about actually running conversations. So actually having a more pleasant automated interface between the bank and the customer, right? For example, chatbots, voice bots, and others. So that's a little bit on like, okay, what we use AI for. We have a number of use cases. I think use cases are interesting, but they're also usually point solutions. So you can see how you can apply. You can take a technology and you can apply it to a specific use case, and you can solve that. So you match technology with a problem, and you fix the problem in a new way. But unless you really unless you solve like a more of a value chain, then the benefit is limited. And I think that we see that with the use of robotics or even chatbots, where you can take parts of processes, but unless you can address the whole end-to-end process, you could even add complexity. So I think that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about in my use case. So I'm going to show you this slide, and this is one of my favorite slides, and a slide that I've used the most internally when I talk about how we need to think about this new technology and how we need to leverage it going forward. So it's basically, you know, I made this slide when I came back from California a few years back, and the first question I always got when I was there was like, what's the 10x stuff are you working on? You know, what problems are you working on? And you know, they all talk about 10x, not 10%, but 10x. And so with the introduction of these new technologies such as machine learning and deep learning and others, you're actually able to do things in a totally different way. But that also requires you to think totally different about your problem solving. So on the left side, I think it's a lot about raising your ambitions way beyond what you usually have done before. So more like dreaming than, you know, than doing, you know, doing the best you can with what you got. It's more about service design. So it's more about starting with a white page on how would you solve this problem if you were a fintech company, for example, like. And then the last ring is about machine learning and other technologies that are actually then enabling these things to be done. But unless you take the perspective of raising the ambitions and starting from scratch and figure out what kind of data do I need what data do I really need to do this process, then you end up in the wrong place. And I have learned that the hard way. I think the right-hand side is just saying then instead of just focusing on Horizon 1 stuff like here and now, which I think is 95% of the yearly spending budget is about, maybe even more, spend a little bit more thinking into how can we do things in new ways, or even how could we, you know, disrupt this business before, or this area before someone else does it. Because you can actually do that now. You can actually build banks, for example, in very short times with available technology if you have the data. So I think this is a key thing to explore into how you think about this. And when I talk about AI in the bank, I usually talk about in 3 different areas to make them understand. So we usually either we make the digital experience better, or we make the experience for our employees better by giving them better tools, or we just make things instant. I think it's a good way of thinking about from a business perspective what you can do. I'm going to show you now an example of how you make things how we make things instant, and I will do that by introducing you to a use case of claims. So a claim is when you get injured. For example, you work for Statoil in Norway and you get a back injury, so you can't work, but you have an insurance that will give you some money when you're away. So the way that's done is that you apply digitally on the internet page, and then the case gets created and it comes to a case handler who looks at this, gathers data from doctors and from other agencies to see what's your history, and then makes a judgment and checks that there's no funny business or no fraud, and at the end you get a yes or no and you make the payments. And this usually takes about 2 to 3 months before we did our case. So this is a case that's about 2 years old now. And the case, the great thing about this case, I think, is not the revolutionary technology as such, but it's the process of how the solution was created, the thought process behind it, right? So the initial thinking was, let's throw software robots at this process and see how much we can get. And we did that. We did the analysis and we saw, you know, we can get 15% improvement, maybe even 20% improvement if we do this with robots instead in parts of this process. But then someone came up with a brilliant idea. Well, you know, let's think different. Let's see let's pose the question, what would it take to make this process instant? What would that take? Kind of applying the higher ambition, service design, and the use of new technology. And then a totally entirely new process was created, which basically is a combination of different cognitive tools, such as OCR and text analytics and RPA and pattern recognition, machine learning, and put in the right sort of flow. It actually meant that you could do this process instantly. So going from 60 days to basically 1 day. And the way it was done, that it was we applied machine learning to actually look at what are the actual rules behind these, what are the patterns that are really sort of important here. So because machine learning basically takes data and examples or output and provides rules or programs. So the rule engine was created, and there was of course some manual input there as well, but that meant that the business could say, like, okay, for all these cases, this is a no-brainer, just send it on. It's a done deal. And then if it's a done deal, you can send it over to a robot who can go into the system and just okay it and send it to a pattern recognition algorithm to see there's no funny business, no flag, send it to another RPA robot and make the payout. So this went from 60 days to 1 day. And then for the yellow flow, where there's a little bit tricky case, so you need the documents from doctors and agencies, then there was actually an email sent out to doctors. You have to wait 2 weeks, nothing you could do about that. But once you got the documents, that could be between 3 and 30 pages, talking about your medical history and all that kind of stuff. We put it on a smart OCR scanner, which put into a straight structured text document, applied text analytics for keywords, who then made a judgment. And if it was okay, then send it to the same route. For the yellow flow, then it was also then cut, except for the 2 weeks. And for the red flow, the really complex flow, it was sent straight to a human. So I think you get the high level solution, and the components here are quite basic. And of course, it's not basic to make this at scale and to make it to other processes. But I think it was a really aha moment for us in the way to apply the thinking of using these new AI tools and techniques. So basically, that was my use case, and proved the point that this is a lot more about the people and the mindset in applying these new tools than I think ever for me before in my 20 years of solving problems in corporates. That you need to think different, and it's a lot up to us to think different, and then you can do great things.
Thank you, Matthias. Very interesting as well. Do you have any idea on how accurate the AI is for the claims handling currently?
Yeah, so I mean, the thing with machine learning is never as accurate as rule engines, right? So you need to set your thresholds in this, for example, in this initial categorization engine. But I think that we start, and it's about, it's also about like the risk appetite you have for something going wrong in this process. I think that it was clear that 95% of all the incoming cases in the manual process came out as green in the end. So the accuracy in terms of how many it got right, I think that improved over time, and more moved from red to yellow and yellow to green, so to speak. But it's a learning journey, and it's very much a calculated risk for the business to take. Like how do you how high do you want to turn up the knob for automation, and what kind of control do you need to have? So the accuracy, I think, was can never be 100%, but same goes for humans, I guess. So that would be my answer.
Perfect. And kind of related to this, it was a kind of long story coming in, but to kind of summarize it in the best possible way, how can we determine how algorithms can become transparent enough for regulatory systems to see that they're not manipulating or distorting public interest and intention? So it's kind of like coming also to the accuracy point, right? Linking it together is like, hey, are the currently the regulators looking at this, and how can you make it in the fairest possible way, right?
Yeah, I think it's a very important question, and I think it's about striking the balance, about finding not being like sort of just happy-go-lucky, everything will be all right, but you also not go, we will not do anything because we don't trust it. It's about striking the balance of control, of control, and that means experience, and it is also a new skill to apply ethics and responsibility into these processes, especially if we talk about claims, if we talk about credit, underwriting, which we're also looking into. We've had to develop new ethic principles in our development processes to cater for those kind of to address those kind of new risks. So that's very important.
And do you see any barriers in kind of applying new technologies?
I think the barriers are in one barrier is the mindset, or the cultural barrier that you have internally in your large corporate. If you're older than 20 years old, if you're from the pre-data driven era, then those are your key barriers, I think. In terms of other barriers, I think it's about this integrity question, and make sure that whatever you need to have almost like some kind of AI or data manifest where you state what will we do, what will we do with customer data, and what we would never do, to be clear on those things. That might also impose barriers on you, just as GDPR is imposing barriers, because you can't use data in the same way they do in China, and you don't want to. But data quality, data regulation is of course one of the the toughest challenge or barrier to work around, or work with, especially if you're a bank and your kind of business model is trust.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Taking the last question now, how, and kind of bundling this all up, how might AI impact banking in the future?
I think banking will become more and more invisible. I think it will be more and more predictive. So it will be more self-driving in a way. For example, the insurance part of stuff will be more sort of proactive, preventing things from happening rather than helping you when things have happened. Your financial advisor will be someone that knows how to allocate your monthly payment because of your spending and your needs and your wants patterns, so it will become more, at least in the retail part of things, it will be more self-driving and more automated. And I think more also, there will be many different niche players. So I think it will be sort of, especially if someone like Amazon would enter into, like they do in the US, they will unbundle the business models and rebundle it somehow. So I think it's interesting, because I think nobody really knows what banking will look like in 10 years, but it will be different and more data driven for sure.
And very disruptive. No, thank you so much, Matthias. Very helpful in answering these questions. And I do see we have actually run out of time, so I would like to thank all the speakers of today and also all the viewers for their great questions. And before you go, actually, make sure you sign up with Inspired Minds as they're running a series of 10 cutting-edge online networking sessions, kind of gathering the global AI community, and also kind of hosted by world-leading AI experts. So these sessions will be running through September, October, and November. And also in the interim, if you like to engage and network with the World Summit AI community, you can do that on Twitter at World Summit AI using the hashtag WSAI20. And I would look forward to seeing you again and hope you're all staying safe. Thank you.